So last week, I refinanced 7 properties in my rental portfolio. I took advantage of the lower rates, and I also took a ton of cash out so that I can go invest into some other deals. But in this video, I want to talk about one of those properties specifically. It was actually a luxury flip that we did a couple of years ago that ended up turning out really bad that we had to make into a rental property. But before I get into how this luxury flip that was a disaster ended up becoming one of my best rentals, I want to let you know that I actually have a brand new rental property course coming out. We're gonna cover how to acquire rental properties, how to finance them. We're even going over how I've built my Airbnb portfolio and all the tax benefits of rental properties. So it's up for pre-sale right now at its cheapest price ever. It's in the link below if you wanna pre-order it and find out more about the course. But anyways, I did not plan for this to become a rental property. My intention was to flip this and hopefully make over $100,000, but it didn't end up that way. Now, typically when a flip turns into a rental property, it means that the flip went really bad, which this one did. Now for me, I usually know what properties we buy that I'm gonna end up keeping in my rental portfolio. If I ever have to keep a flip in my rental portfolio, it means the flip went really bad and I had no choice but to keep it. Either I was gonna lose a lot of money on the flip and so it didn't make sense to sell it, or my loan was becoming due because we get short-term loans on these flips. And this particular house was a combination of both. So let me back up a little bit. Here's a picture of the house. I bought it back in 2019 and I thought I got a really good deal on it. We paid $525,000 for the house, and we thought that it was gonna be an absolute home run of a flip. We figured we could spend about $80,000 on the renovation and sell it for over $800,000. And if those targets hit, we would make over $100,000 on the flip. Now, it's always good to be optimistic about your flips. You wouldn't be buying it if you didn't believe in it. But luxury is a little tougher because that market has a high variance of pricing and things that could happen. What I mean by that is when I go to flip an entry-level home that's just a normal track home, there's a ton of comps, we're almost certain what we're gonna sell it for. Maybe there's already been a couple model match sales at the same price. At that point, we know we're pretty much gonna get that price. Also, the rehab on these entry-level homes is a lot easier. The homes are typically smaller, so you should be able to finish it a lot quicker. We're not picking these crazy designs like you would in luxury because it's very streamlined, it's a simple rehab. In the luxury flips, everything changes. You've got to use custom designs, higher end materials, renovation's typically gonna take longer, and usually it would take longer to sell the home because there's not as many buyers. And that might be hard to believe now in 2021 where everything's flying off the shelf, but back in 2019 and years prior, that's how it was. But the big decision that we had to make on this flip wasn't whether we were gonna renovate it and make it nice, that was a given. The big decision was, do we want to put a pool? You see, in luxury, a pool is kind of expected. If you're gonna spend over $800,000 on a house here in Vegas, you expect that you're gonna get a pool with that house. And for us to put a pool in, it would typically cost about $50,000 to $60,000. So that would bring my budget from $80,000 to about $140,000. But here's the deal. Anytime you do a renovation, you wanna make sure that you're getting a return on that money. So the real question is, if I'm gonna spend $60,000 extra to put this pool in, I better be making at least $90,000 more. Because there's no point to spend $60,000 to make an extra $60,000. It's just pushing out the timeline and it's more cash out of pocket that you didn't need to do. And the best way to figure out whether it's worth it or not is to look at the comps. What are the comps selling for with a pool? What are they selling for without a pool? Well, unfortunately for me, this community did not have very many sales and they were all scattered across the board. This particular model had a few different sales that were somewhat like mine, but not really. For instance, there was one house that was somewhat close to a model match. It wasn't renovated, which was good for us, but it was on the golf course and had a pool. And that particular house sold for almost $900,000. Now I said, look, I get that it's on the golf course, that adds a ton of value. It has a pool, which adds a ton of value, but it's not renovated at all. It's super ugly inside. So if I'm fully renovated, even though I don't have a pool or I'm not on the golf course, I should be able to get at least $800,000. That was my theory anyway, because I didn't have a true model match to work off of. There was also another house that was on the golf course without a pool and without being fully renovated that sold for $800,000. So my theory again was, if this sold for $800,000, not renovated, but on the course, then maybe I'm worth $800,000 because I am renovated and off the course. We both don't have pools, so we're equal on that. So we're getting closer to a model match, but not exact. There was one last comp that we looked at that sold for $750,000. It wasn't on the golf course, it wasn't renovated, and it had a spool. If you don't know what a spool is, it's essentially a mix between a spa and a pool. It's a lot bigger than a normal spa, but you definitely wouldn't confuse it with a pool. It wouldn't take that long to heat up since it's not that big, so a lot of people like putting them in, especially in these newer homes where people don't want a big giant pool. But looking at that, I said, okay, if this got $750,000 with a spool, not on the course, not renovated, once again, my theory is we should sell mine for $800,000. Well, you already know how this ends. Obviously, that did not happen. So with all that being said, we looked at it and said, you know what? I don't think we really need to put a pool in this property. It's not really worth spending the 50, 60 grand. I think we're gonna be able to sell it for $800,000 just being fully renovated and the nicest house in the neighborhood. It may not have the pool or the view that these other ones have, but it's by far the nicest interior out of all of them. So we ended up spending about $90,000 on the rehab, but it took us a lot longer than anticipated because the city flagged us for a bunch of permit stuff. And anytime the city flags you for anything, you just know it's gonna take a long time to get things done for them. And it's not even that the rehab takes a long time, it just takes the city a long time to process paperwork, to approve you, to check it, then process paperwork again. Anytime the city is dealing with you on a project, it's never good. But nonetheless, once we finally got it done, it was a beautiful home and we decided to list it for $850,000. Now the reason we listed it for that is because we were really proud of how it looked, but also we knew that we had room to come down if people didn't want to pay that price. Once again, in today's market, you're seeing a lot of people price stuff low so they can create these extreme bidding wars. Typically, you don't have the chance to go higher than list price significantly. Usually you would set that price and then hopefully somebody pays it. And that's exactly what we were trying to do then. We wouldn't do that now in today's market. But nonetheless, we listed it for $850,000 and we got quite a few showings, but no offers. A bunch of weeks pass and we start to lower our price. At this point, we're still not getting offers and our price is all the way down to $800,000. We have it priced at $800,000, still no offers. Finally, we drop it all the way down to $750,000. We're starting to get some offers in the $730,000 range, $740,000 range, and at this point, I'm pretty much just fed up with it. Because the rehab took so long and because it had been sitting on the market so long, I'd been into this for about a year. And my holding cost on this property were $6,000 a month in interest-only payments. So by holding this for a year, I had already spent $50,000 in money cost. And once you factor in the renovation cost of $90,000 and the purchase price of $525,000, I was all into this for around $700,000 plus all the realtor fees, all the closing costs and everything else. Essentially, if I sell it for $730,000, $740,000, I was gonna break even on this home. And finally, I just said, you know what? I'm gonna keep this house because it's a really good house. I think in the long term, it's gonna be worth it. I think it's gonna rent really good. Let's just take it off the market and rent it out. And you might be wondering, Ryan, why didn't it sell? What went wrong? The thing that went wrong was we didn't put the pool. We underestimated how much people would want a pool in that neighborhood at that price point. The fact that we didn't have a pool and we had a small backyard that wasn't anything special, they didn't want to buy the home. And so I made the decision that if we're gonna take it off and rent it, I might as well put a pool in it as well so that when I am ready to sell it, it's gonna sell. So I immediately found a renter for $5,000 a month, which was less than the $6,000 a month in rent. But I figured if I go put a pool in this and I do a refi afterwards, it's gonna appraise much higher and my payment will be a lot lower. But at least in the meantime, if I have the renter paying me $5,000, that's gonna help me out a lot because I'm not losing $6,000 every month anymore. And so this guy starts renting it and we start the process of putting in a pool. Well, let's fast forward a couple of months. The pool is almost done, but the tenant stops paying rent. We try to work with him and figure out how we can get him caught up, but eventually we have to evict him. And even though that sucked for everybody, it actually ended up being decent for me in the long run. We got the pool done, and because of that, we could get more in rent, and we ended up renting it out to somebody else for $5,700 a month. And during this time, obviously the market has gone extremely crazy. In the last 6 months, that same neighborhood has had over 5 homes sell for $900,000 or more. And there's only one home on the market right now, which is a model match, and it's listed for $1 million. So he might set an even bigger comp. So if I had to guess, this house is worth at least $900,000 at this point. And I would say more, but I forgot to add that we didn't put a full pool. We actually put a spool like the other person did in their comp. The spool cost me about $35,000, and I think it fits really well because it's a smaller backyard, but it gives you the ability to market it as a luxury home with a pool. But the best part is, as I said at the beginning of this video, I recently refinanced a bunch of my rental properties, and this was one of them. My mortgage on this house now is only $3,000 a month. I also got a HELOC on it for $100,000 that I could tap into if I wanted to as well. If I tapped into it, the payment would be $500 a month extra. So with the rent being $5,700 and my current mortgage only being $3,000, it's an absolute home run of a rental. It cash flows great, and it's had crazy appreciation in the last 2 years. It's one of those rare instances where a flip that goes really bad and you make all the wrong decisions ends up turning good and you get all the benefits. And I didn't even mention the tax side of it, where we get all the depreciation and all of these capital expenditures that I've written off already. So it's been a complete win keeping this property. And I'm really happy to have it a part of my rental portfolio. I don't plan to sell it anytime soon. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, I am releasing my brand new rental property course that is going to go in depth on how to build a rental portfolio. We talk about how to acquire properties, how to finance them. We even go over Airbnb and tax benefits. There's a whole bunch of cool things. If you want to get it at its cheapest price ever, definitely go get it in pre-sale. I'll link to it below. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this case study. I hope it gave you value. If it did, make sure you like this video. Make sure you're subscribed. Go follow me on all my other socials. Till next time, peace.